How you all doing? Hope you're good. Okay, let me just check something. I have a feeling I'm kind of quiet. Let's turn that down a little. All right, we'll get there. Sound. Sorry, guys. Can you guys tell me if my sound is too low or if it's good? You sound good, music too loud. I'm okay. Music still too loud? Just let me know. The lighting is rather dramatic here. Let me shine some light on the situation. You know, my sound seems to be fine. Sorry, but you are used to it at this point. I would hope. For nonsense. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. That's better. Tell me it isn't. Vocals are too low. Music too loud. Once too low. Okay. How about now? Let me know. Just reading Lulu's statement of intent for today's stream. With that in mind, Lulu, I'd like you to not participate in the stream today and not interact. Okay? Hopefully that little bit of reverse psychology will do the job and get things back to normal. Hope you're all doing good. Let's have a fantastic session, shall we? Why not? And I'd like to start off, you're probably wondering what this is. This is just a little USB cable coming off my Cintiq. Why is my Cintiq at this weird angle in front of me like this? Because I'm going to do a quick draw over of something I want you guys to look at. So let's get right to it without further ado. Or with more ado. I'm not sure which is which. Let's look at this. Without further ado. So what is ado? Never understood that one. Well, look at this. We're looking at backs today, guys and gals. And it looks really complex, but we're just going to focus on just... Look, we can't possibly hope to understand the entire back anatomy in one session, but I think we can look at a few little ideas which I do think are going to help you. Excuse me. So with that in mind, all right, a few things I want you to look out for, because you, or just to know about, because I think that we have a tendency to kind of have blind spots with this stuff. So let me just faint that out just a little bit. Okay, you've heard me talk about the occipital ridge all the time. Sitting right here. Okay. Super important, because look up, this is really where the trapezius start their journey down the form. And then it comes along down here, and it's actually attaching at the front to the clavicles. So we can see the clavicles here on our see-through skeleton here. So the trapezius actually is attaching at the front with the clavicle. The trapezius is coming out like this. And it's also attaching at the back all the way along the ridge of the scapula, which we can see here, right? Ridge of the scapula here. So the trapezius comes down, it's attaching, and then it comes down, and we get this huge V shape. We tend, on very lean models, we tend to see this V shape. So something to look out for and be mindful of. Because it really helps subdivide the back. And the thing with this V This coming off the latissimus, which is coming under here and attaching down here, right? You can see the latissimus coming to here. These are things that I sometimes draw, even if I can't see them, to help subdivide the back and bring visual interest, right? Because we've talked about before, the back can be tricky, especially on a, a relatively lean, less muscular model. Their arms are forward and the back just becomes an expanse of flatness. So these are really useful things for subdividing. One thing I want you to really be mindful of as well, because I don't think people realize this, is look at where the deltoid attaches to the shoulder muscle. It attaches to the ridge of this scapula, right? We talked about the scapulas here. If we look at our little see-through fella over here. So here's our scapula and here's the ridge of the scapula sitting here, right? Got the same thing obviously here. But look how far in the shoulder attaches. Way more than you might think. You probably have never even thought about where the shoulder attaches at the back. You're like, it attaches at the back? Yes. And this is where it attaches. So today we learn. But super useful to understand that conceptually. Now, the other thing we need to understand conceptually is what is going on here. Well, this is just a nightmare. I don't even know where we start with that. Well, actually I do. So what is going on here? Because we're going to see this, and we're going to see this in some of the poses coming up. What is this? First, well, this is what's called, there are 4 muscles of the scapula. That's the teres major. Okay. And in here we have something called the teres minor. And then the next one up, this one that we're seeing a little slice of here, is called the infraspinatus. And there's actually a 4th one called supraspinatus, which kind of sits in the gully, let's say, of the scapula. So the supraspinatus kind of sits in here, actually goes behind here, and then attaches over here, right? Supraspinatus is sitting in there, something like that, okay? Now, just coming back, okay, so where is this? Well, this is teres major, and teres major is sitting here, and it's kind of coming, it's doing something like this. Now, look at an anatomy book for how this looks properly, but something like that, okay? Teres minor, this little fella here, is kind of sitting in this region, but it's attached at the front of the humerus, right? And then infraspinatus, the one that we're seeing here, is actually sitting in here and is attached kind of like so, over once again to the humerus. So these 3, this one, actually all 4 of them are attached to the humerus, right? This one at the front, at the back here, teres minor at the front of the humerus, infraspinatus at the back here, and then supraspinatus, sorry, kind of over the top. All right. So when we see this little bunch sitting in here, we now have a bit of a sense of what it is that we're looking at. Okay. Other things, we've talked a lot about C7 and T1, cervical 7 and thoracic 1. They're basically vertebra, right? C7 is here, I believe that's C7, and T1 is here. And it's basically where the vertebra go. So we've got cervical 1, I think starts kind of up here, right? And then 2, 3, etc., right? All the way down to 9 that sits here. Those are obviously a bit smaller because otherwise they wouldn't fit. And then thoracic is the start of the rib cage, right? So the rib cage is something like here, and then thoracic 1 starts here all the way down until we get down to L1 to L5, which are sitting in this region down here, coming into the sacrum. Okay. why am I telling you all this? Because we see C7 and T1. We see these two little fellas right here. Why do we see them? Well, one of the reasons is, look at the way the trapezius, which is sitting in here, look at the way it really thins out in this region, right? Really kind of becomes almost like connective tissue, like fascia. And consequently, because it's thinned out, it tends to reveal those two right there. Okay, this triangle, or I guess we could call it a triangle. This triangle sitting in here is another really useful subdivision, in the same way the V of the trapezius is, and to some extent even the latissimus coming down here. This is a triangle that I sometimes draw once again to bring visual interest. So useful stuff, right? The latissimus is actually attaching behind the trapezius here, and it's actually attaching up to the to our humerus. I think at the front, if I'm not mistaken. What else? Oh yeah, I think just kind of, why not? Let's look at one last little thing, and then we'll get cracking on the drawing. We've talked a lot about, obviously, our sacral dimples, which in this case would be sitting about here and here, right? The sacral triangle coming in here. If we had fat on our model here, we would see that the cheeks of the gluteus would be probably doing something a little bit more like that, right? You have to keep in mind that we have no skin on there and no fat pads showing themselves here. Iliac crest going like this, going obviously to the front, to the acis, which is probably sitting about here, right? Same obviously on this side. So if we could see through our model, kind of, oh, there we go. You can kind of see the acis right here and here, right? So we're coming around, the journey sitting there to the acis, which we've all drawn 1,000 times. So that's essentially what's going on. But what do we have here? Well, in here, we've basically got gluteus medius, and we've got something called the tensor fasciae latae, which we've seen from, we tend to see it because it's attached to the acis. But look for the gluteus medius sitting in here. Yeah, meeting up with the tensor fasciae latae, which is meeting up with the iliotibial tract, which comes down the leg and attaches at the side of the knee. You know, we talk about the butterfly shape, and we can really kind of see it exhibit itself here, right? Same thing on this side. You can see it. Why do we have this butterfly shape? Look at what's happening here. This is actually where the great trochanter is located, right? Actually, it's not. The great trochanter, sorry, I believe it's down here. It's, well, we can actually look on our model. Yes, see? Okay, so this is actually better than me drawing it. So the great trochanter is the widest part of where the hips are, right? Obviously on females a little bit more. Probably on a female we would be looking at something like that. But this indent is where we basically have all the connective tissue of where the femur is attaching, or not attaching, but connecting with the pelvis. All right. Hopefully that all makes sense. So yeah, that's basically what's going on. Are the erector spinae visible under the flat tendons? I don't think so. I don't think so. We've got so many layers. You know, it's I don't think it's really something that we're seeing in any meaningful way. So the flat tendons hold the hip joint in place. Well, there's actually, we can't see it here, but there's a whole lot of connective tissue. It basically kind of looks almost like this fascia now that's keeping all of that stuff together, right? Okay, I hope that helps. Obviously we can see our lower lumbar muscles coming in, and then this stuff all branches out, right? It kind of, as we go up the form, we can't see it because it's underneath the latissimus, but these lumbars basically they branch out like branches on a tree, and they get super thin, and we don't really see that stuff, right? Sorry for the incredibly quick and dirty anatomy demo, but hopefully it just gives you a little bit of a sense of what it is that you're looking at when you're drawing this stuff. I'm going to get into triceps and how they're connected and all of that in another session, but we will. So yeah, we'll get to that. So anyway, I hope that starting with an introduction is really useful for me. Thank you. You're very welcome, Emmy. Fascinating and useful info for figure drawing. It's really useful. Guys, I have included in today's session, you will notice I have included not this particular image, but I have included a diagrammatical image, an anatomy study, so to speak, which labels all of these muscles, and it's very similar to this. It's all labeled. That is in the reference pack for today's session. I will also be starting an anatomy tab on the Discord channel where I am going to upload a lot of these anatomical reference images. I'm basically working with stuff that I've found useful in the past and that I hope that you guys will find useful too. Some of it's still in print, some of it not. So yeah, hopefully that will be useful to you. So keep an eye on the Discord, keep an eye out. Maybe I'll get a chance to do it tomorrow. Keep an eye out for a new, as I said, a new tab called Anatomy. I'll be putting up photos of the écorché. I'll be putting up some reference images, some anatomy reference images. And maybe, you know, we'll use it as a home for things like that list that I uploaded the other day to a different part of the Discord channel. So yeah, that's the plan. So let me just get my drawing board in place here, and we will switch to our regular viewing. That should do it. Okay. Let me just close Photoshop, otherwise I'm not going to be able to see my reference. There we go. Let's put chat back over here where we like it. Cool. All right, first pose. So what we have here on all of these, probably much to Rick's dismay, is we do not have full figures. We are focusing in on the back. Okay, this first pose I think is a really good example of all the things that we've essentially just looked at, and we can start to hopefully put some of this knowledge into practice. Let me start the timer. I think we're going to go for probably 20 would be my guess. Plan on that. Now there's a certain, what I like to call a quietness to this pose, but I don't think we should be deceived by its apparent quietness. I'm going to find my center line right away. I'm also going to look for opportunities to bring as much, let's call it dynamics, as possible. So I'm just finding a real basic relationship between the upper and the lower torso. Alright. Rib cage is going to be sitting out here. Sacrum. You can really see clearly, because if you look at the tension he's putting on his glutes, it's really kind of highlighting this relationship between the sacrum and also the iliac crest, and that really lovely example. Now we want to be mindful of the fact that we're kind of, perspective is weird on this one. Well, I think there's a very slight rotation in the rib cage, Lulu. But yeah, and the shoulders are, the scapula are roughly kind of mirroring each other. And so we need to be careful with that, because what we don't want is, we don't want, when we got these, we want to avoid symmetry, right? The legs are almost kind of coming towards us like this. Obliques. You can, Lulu, but very quickly, you know, we see that, we do see that kind of attachment down here, but very quickly the bulk of the lat kind of takes over, right? We can't see it, but the occipital ridge is back here, which we were obviously talking about being the beginning of the journey for the trapezius. But because we've got the way that, you know, the angle, the tension on his shoulders, which are pushing the scapula up, so scapula actually sitting up here, which is not kind of where we would expect them to be in their relaxed state. Arms are kind of sitting there. Sorry, just checking my music situation. Okay. All right. Shoulders, oh, sorry, wrist is about there. Okay, so we can really see that trapezius, right? Kind of bunching up here. It's got that connection and then it's coming down this way, but that V shape is getting distorted because of the tension that he has. But we can really kind of see it coming down this way, right? On both sides. Something like that. Now, look at the deltoid, what we were talking about, attaching over here. And we can see the latissimus. As we said, it attaches behind the trapezius here, right? We can see it coming up this way. And then look at the way it's kind of bulging out the, what I'm guessing is the teres major sitting in there. Could be a mix of teres minor and major. And then infraspinatus kind of get a hint of it right there. Retro Boy says, good day, Richard. Good day. Today, what is your goal with this drawing? It's great so far. Thank you. The goal is to do an anatomy study that doesn't look like an anatomy study. Because, you know, and I think it actually kind of brings up an interesting point, which is, you know, it's fine having all of this kind of anatomical knowledge, let's say. But what you do want to avoid is, at least in my opinion, at least for this type of thing, is you do want to avoid a sterile kind of anatomy drawing. We're still hopefully going to bring some rhythm, and if we're really lucky, hopefully a little bit of grace into the drawing, which has a firm foundation in the anatomy that we're showing. So I guess that's my goal, is to do something that's anatomically faithful, that doesn't just look like, you know, we're just trying to check boxes, so to speak. Because anatomy studies can have a tendency to look very just sterile, if that makes sense. But, you know, with all the will in the world, that doesn't mean that I'm going to achieve any of those goals. But you did ask. Latissimus, once again, going behind the trapezius. Coming down into the oblique, which is sitting in there. Trapezius with the neck is kind of like a dagger shape. Never thought of it like that. Well, there's the trapezius coming off the ridge of the scapula, right? Now we've got this tension here that you wouldn't normally necessarily see, but generally speaking, yeah, the trapezius is coming down in a V shape like this, right? Down to the mid back. Yeah, occipital ridge. I'm going to actually lower it just a little bit. His head is about there. We can see his ear sitting here. and his bun. In there, his hairline, and he's got some tufts of hair kind of sitting in here too. Let's change that. Yeah, a lot going on also with the triceps. And we get a very clear sense of those two heads, but as I said, I want to kind of stay away from getting into a descriptive discussion about those today, because I think that might be something that we'll do next in our quest to understand our anatomy. Because I don't think in all the streams we've done we've ever really had a conversation about the triceps, other than, you know, the very basic fundamental stuff. But I think it's useful. As you know, I'm not big for doing a lot of superfluous anatomy that is not I'm a big strong believer, let's say, of practical anatomy. But I do think the triceps definitely, and how they attach to both the humerus and the scapula. Each head attaches one to the other, one to the humerus, one to the scapula. I do think that stuff is useful for us to understand and get a deeper sense of mechanics, you know. Been doing a couple of studies, says Retro, but my figures and faces look mildly cartoonish. Don't know if it's my shading or what. Okay, I have never seen one of your drawings, Retro Boy, but one thing I would say to look out for is too many curves against curves. People have a and that could very easily translate into something looking cartoonish. One thing you'll notice with my work is, and look, as I like to say, within the boundaries of good taste, there should be a lot more straights in your work than you think, maybe initially. All right, let's get into a little bit of line work here. So now we're going to really try and hopefully push some rhythmical ideas and get away just a little bit from just, you know, hitting ourselves over the head with the anatomy here. Hopefully we can make it a little bit more rhythmical. Let's see now, let's come across the form. Let's hit from the oblique on this side. Once again, we're looking for opportunities. We've got a lot of symmetry in this pose. Let's look for every opportunity to break symmetry. While hopefully maintaining the overall structural integrity of the pose. Now, it is worth, just because people will be wondering what's he doing, he's on a round table-like thing. And I am going to just indicate it here because it does help give context to his overall you know, angle that we're looking down on him. He's almost like he's doing push-ups, right? If that makes sense for those of you who don't have the reference. There's a trapezius sitting in there. Oh. Okay. Tricep sitting in here. And down to our elbow. And then across the form down to the bicep here. What part of anatomy would you recommend to study first to gradually comprehend the relationships, each form as a whole? So, I don't know how many streams you've ever seen before, Retro Bro, but something I bang on about a lot is I think there's far more value, at least as you're starting out your journey. You get far more bang for your buck understanding landmarks, which are obviously anatomy, but landmarks like, for example, the sacral dimples, which are sitting right here and here, right? From the front, the acis, the manubrium, the pit of the neck, the arch of the ribcage, the xiphoid process, at the bottom of the sternum. Those type of landmarks, you're going to get, they're a really good place to kind of start understanding. So for example, with the acis at the front, which is the kind of, if you take the iliac crest all the way around to the front, if we could see through our figure, it'd be about here. Why is that so important? Because it's a major transitional junction from the upper to the lower torso. Several muscles of the legs attach at that point. The obliques meet at that point and start their journey upwards kind of at that point. Or, turn around, let's say, coming off the iliac crest. So understanding where the acis is and then building out from there. Okay, what muscles attach around there? These types of ideas are super, super useful. The acromion process, this little pit of the shoulder right here, that is such an important landmark to understand, because the way the deltoid and the trapezius and the head of the humerus sit underneath it. And then we kind of, just by understanding these few basic landmarks, we get a lot of anatomy knowledge kind of for free. Through our understanding of these few landmarks. I think that's a really good place to start. I also then think, there's obviously major muscles, like the pectoral muscles. The deltoid is several smaller muscles, but you can think of it as a whole, right? Bicep, tricep, the large ones, right? That's a really good place to understand. And secondary muscles and the smaller ideas will come in time. Here's one way I look at it, is have an anatomy book beside you while you're drawing. When you see a little bit of anatomy, that you feel you need clarification on, open the anatomy book and look at the model, look at your anatomy book and go, yeah, I can see now, I can see where infraspinatus and supraspinatus are sitting in the scapula, or I can see teres minor or teres major. Okay, now I understand those four muscles and their relationship. And but look at the way the trapezius lies over the top and kind of obscures them a little bit, and it becomes, so the learning becomes an organic process rather than let's learn, like a dictionary, let's learn all the muscles beginning with A. This is absurd. This will never work, right? I believe all learning, regardless of what it is, but in this case, there should be an organic nature to it. So much of this stuff is going to be on a need-to-know basis. Oh yeah, I'm working on forearms, close up on forearms. I really want to understand. Okay, there's 8 muscles of the forearm, essentially. 4 flexors, 4 extensors. Okay, that's cool. But I can think of them as kind of like extensors, flexors to start with, and then it's like I can subdivide if I need to, but only when I need to. I'm not going to, because otherwise the study of anatomy can become so overwhelming that, you'll end up, there's a high probability of failure. But, sorry, just to stop my talking just for a second. I'm at a point now where I'm going to start to think about tone. But I think you need to kind of understand that learning anatomy is going to take a while, but a lot of it's going to be context-based, if that makes sense. As you need something, you're going to learn about it, and it's going to be a slow kind of ongoing process. And there's some stuff that you're never going to probably learn, and you're going to get by just fine not knowing it. Honestly, I would also say a lot depends on what you want to do. The kind of anatomy that let's say a 2D animator is going to need to know, for the most part, for most projects, is going to be a much more simplified version of anatomy than a figurative artist might need, for example. So, once again, if you want to be an animator, do you need to necessarily beat yourself up with 6 months of studying anatomy? So I would assess and evaluate all of those ideas and ask yourself those questions as you start and then continue your journey. And the answer to those questions might change as time goes on too. So I'm just basically hitting those transitions, and because we've got a very kind of very angular, sculpted like model, the transition between light and tone is quite dramatic, if that makes sense. What was the top of the sternum called again? The manubrium. Up here, the pit of the neck is called the manubrium. And the middle of the gluteus is the sacrum. That little area in here looks like a face hugger from Alien. That's the sacrum. But I do think a lot of beginners and a lot of beginning art students get really intimidated and freaked out by anatomy. Well, I think a lot of people come into art, they go, well, yeah, I want to draw the figure. I didn't plan on becoming a doctor. No, but you know what? Me neither. I know far more anatomy than I ever thought I would, as someone who doesn't study medicine. There you go. That's life. I believe it's really useful to have an understanding, but I also think that you need to be measured in your expectations as you start out. Really just speaking from my own experience. That's all. I remember it freaking me out a bit when I started out. And I think some people go, well, yeah, but figure drawing's hard enough. I can't learn anatomy too. It's like, yeah, you kind of can't afford not to either. Does someone have a good online reference for anatomic illustrations? Look, it's not cheap, and by not cheap, it's like 20, I think probably about 25 bucks, or depending on where you are in the world. But I use an app on my phone called, or my iPad, called Essential Anatomy. Essential Anatomy 5, I think it is now. I personally think it's probably the best resource that you can use. And the reason is because you can rotate the figure, you can enlarge things, you can tap on a muscle, it'll give you the name of the muscle. It's just an incredibly logical way to do it in this day and age. You know, I can't in good conscience nowadays recommend anatomy books when we have this type of technology. If you're looking for a cheaper alternative, I think, you know, there's an awful lot of online resources. I think there's some trash out there too, to be honest. Be careful. All right. Right, I'm going to do just a little bit of blending. I'll just go in very subtly and just maybe add a little bit more darks, a little bit, pull out a couple of lights with the eraser, and we will be calling it for this one. Couple more minutes, guys. Thank you for your patience. Do you offer apprentice work by any chance? Retro Boy, I do, absolutely. If you go to my website, you will see, just click on the mentorship banner and it'll take you right through the process. Yeah. Atla says, my husband uses Essential Anatomy as a physical therapist. It's an excellent app. There you go. Yeah, it's great. For me, it was really kind of like, you know, I've been there, and there's some anatomy books that I've worked with, which I've enjoyed. But going to Essential Anatomy was a game changer. Speeds up the process too, I really think. The fact that you can rotate the figure in real time, the fact that you can turn on and off muscle layers, they have like 7 or 8 different layers. You can turn them on and off, or you can even fade them so you can see the muscles underneath. So when we were looking at the scapula, for example, you can see how those, you know, teres minor and teres major, how they interact, or how, you know, how we can see them underneath the latissimus, for example, or whatever, how they're connecting to the humerus and that type. So it's just a wonderful kind of wonderful resource. All right, I think I'm getting close now. I'll just hit this with just a little bit of a little bit of eraser. And we will move on to the next pose. Super hard to see, like what I think on camera you can't probably even see what the needed eraser is doing, but it definitely helps. Emmanuel, welcome. You're a new member. Awesome. Emmanuel, if you go to my channel page and you go to the community tab, you scroll down as a member, you'll see a link to the reference page, which is hosted on my website. You go there and you'll see all the images that we're working from, and you'll see the anatomy reference images that I have up there. Yeah, and also you'll see on the same community chat thing, you as a member, you will see a link to the Discord channel community. You can go on Discord, see what people are doing, see people's work, post your own work. It's a nice thing. All right, I think I'm going to call it there. Good enough. Good enough. yeah, let's move on to the next pose. Just my hands here. Hopefully if I've achieved one thing, we asked by what was my intention. Hopefully we have more than just a cold anatomy study, right? We do obviously, that was part of our things that we're setting out for, but and hopefully what we haven't got is too much symmetry between the left and the right side. Hopefully we've been able to put in asymmetry where sometimes there is very little to work with. So that's kind of the goal. I think that I'm not too displeased, you know. James says I got carried away on the arm muscles. Good. Why not? Okay, how's that pencil faring up? I think we'll move on. Next pose. Appreciate the streams, but really wanted to see the corresponding references. Yeah, well look, that's kind of, you really do need to see the reference, right? It's a kind of pretty important part of the process. Now this next pose, our model, I'm going to reset the clock here. Our model is doing something quite bizarre. Pulling in his stomach in what we would really consider it to be an artificial, or you know, in a way that's not normal. I'm going to use it to find where the rib cage is, but I'm probably going to give him a little bit more of a normal stomach. This is a side pose, but it really helps us see how the latissimus and the muscles of the back, how we see them from profile. All right. What is your opinion or decision-making process on whether to include a cast shadow or not? I was just reading about how important it can be, considering it can flatten out the form. Well, we've got two different cast shadows. We've got the cast shadow that one object makes upon another, right? Well, obviously that's essentially what a cast shadow is. It's a shadow that's being cast onto a surface from another volume, another mass. We've got the ones on the body. So say, for example, the cast shadow of an arm on the torso, that would be a cast shadow. And then we've got the cast shadow of the shadow that the figure is making on the surface that it's either standing, sitting, or lying on, right? I have a bit of a bad habit of ignoring the cast shadow that the person is making on the surface that they're in contact with or that they're in proximity to. But cast shadows that are, for example, an arm that is casting a shadow on a torso, 100%, you have to have those, right? Because especially if we want to, you know, obviously we've got the different types of drawing, right? Diagrammatical drawing, and we've got tonal drawing. If we're just doing a tonal drawing, the whole conversation about cast shadow is irrelevant. But if we're doing a tonal drawing, then cast shadow, or shadow tone, is a critical element of that process. And you certainly can't do that process without cast shadow. Really, in my opinion, you could, I guess, you could have tone on shadow without having an actual cast shadow, but you'll end up with an awful lot of very, very soft tone that would potentially be lacking dynamics and make figures look very soft and round. Would be my feeling. Now, scapular is sitting this region in here. Look at the way the deltoid is coming off that. We talked about coming off the ridge of the scapula at the back. I'm just blocking in really large shapes for right now. These things will adjust as we go. Triceps and so over here. Brachioradialis sitting here, coming in. That'll do for now. It's not needs refining, but that'll do. It's the latissimus. Kind of sitting in here. Coming down, sitting in there. Our oblique is sitting in here, and then we have, yeah, he's doing this really crazy thing that I haven't been able to do since I was about 6 probably, which is sucking in his stomach. But I'm going to ignore it, and I'm going to just kind of, or at least tone it down and give more where the abdominal wall will be. Probably about there. You can see the bulge of that teres major, I think. Teres major and teres minor sitting in here. All right. So we can see the tensor fasciolate just really, it's quiet, but we can see it sitting in there, kind of meeting up with kind of a bulge, which is got to be kind of rectus femoris sitting in here, coming down that way. Gluteus medius sitting in this area, and then gluteus maximus sitting in here. And then coming in that iliotibial tract, going down the leg, sitting in there. How long, asked Retro, how long have you been studying the figure, your journey as an artist? How long I've been studying the figure is a tough question to answer. I will say I bought my first anatomy book when I was probably about 13. But could I say with any sincerity that that's when I started studying anatomy? Not really. Clearly something was ticking along in my head, but I wasn't really drawing the figure at that point. You see, I got into drawing through working in animation. Way back in the mid late 80s, when hand-drawn animation was really the only way. So there was a requirement to be able to, to be able to draw. And to some degree or another, the better you could draw, the easier your life was going to be. I think that got pulled up a notch or stepped up a notch when I went to, in 1997, I went to work on Prince of Egypt at DreamWorks. And obviously, so many of the characters in that film are humans. And the emphasis on being able to draw anatomy well really kind of revealed itself. And it was also a time in my life where I found people working at DreamWorks who had some seriously good teachers. And I would say a lot of my development over those few years working at that studio really helped, bring things to the next level. But I can't say I really started taking figure drawing seriously probably till the early noughts, mid-early noughts. I don't think I started going to regular figure drawing probably till about 2004, 2005, something like that. Wish I'd done it sooner. Cookie Monster asks a very interesting question. Richard, do you have any idea how much time I should spend finding an authentic artistic style and how much on developing technique and knowledge? I don't think you should spend a single moment thinking about style. Remember, my teacher used to say something very interesting, which I have copied, parroted myself, which is, your style will find you, because it's true. Guess what? Do 10,000 drawings, and before you know it, you'll look at them and go, oh, look at that, I have a style. I would strongly advise to not be consciously seeking to have a particular style. At least that would be my feeling. I think style should be something born organically from the doing of something. And for God's sake, don't try and draw like your heroes. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't do master copies or the likes, but don't try and be a clone of one of your heroes. I see it in animation all the time. Animation is rife with it. Everyone basically trying to draw like the 5 top artists working in animation. Like, you know, there was a painter called Mary Blair. She was very active. I would say, now an animation historian's going to correct me here, but I'm going to say she was active from about the mid-50s. And she was very influential on a lot of those classic Disney films. And she was a color stylist, painter, color stylist. And there are today more Mary Blair clones than there, in my opinion, there should be. And I get why, because she was a genius with color. The problem is, every bloody Pixar movie now looks like the art direction was done by Mary Blair. And I think that's a shame. I'm probably oversimplifying to make a point. But the point being is, imagine, and I'll give you another, actually, let me give you another example. I think art center's really guilty of this. And well, imagine, you know, take something like art center, right? You've got the same tutors teaching there for 30 years. Half the students coming out of there, more than half the students coming out of there, all paint like their instructors, right? Or these 5 top concept artists in working in animation or in visual effects. And you just have a bunch of parrots. Now, this is not the type of environment that you get in HR Giga, right? And I just think that because of the internet and because of people desperately trying to draw like their heroes, we've ended up with a lot of incredibly repetitive and boring art. And my opinion would be, just let the process happen organically. That would be my advice. You have a style, and here's the other thing, like, great, so you paint like Frank Frazetta, awesome. Guess what? Another thing my teacher used to say, congratulations, you've robbed the world of potentially a completely unique style, which is yours. So this is the feeling I have about style. Don't worry about style. Style will come. Style will come. It will show up. It will present itself. Your authentic style will happen if you show up at the easel, drawing board, whatever, exactly. But it takes time. It takes time, and it's going to take getting those 10,000 bad drawings out of the way, and in fact, frankly, you never have them quite out of the way. There's always a bad drawing ready to present itself. But don't be worrying about style. That would be my opinion. I never thought about how am I going to draw. I think I have my own style. I certainly am influenced by people. That's unavoidable, right? But I think I have also I think I have a style that I can call my own. But it's certainly not something I seek to develop. Just draw. Just draw. The style will all take care of itself, don't you worry. Understanding anatomy is coming very slowly for me. If I draw today and come back a month later, I've improved dramatically. Here's the thing. The study of anatomy is attached to some degree or another, I'm guessing, to the development of your drawing, right? The way I look at it is you're learning a language. Going to take time, and I think that if you want a comparison, which is a fair comparison, is how long would it take you to learn violin? You're going to be good in a week, in a month? Geez, with violin, after 6 months you're lucky if you're making a noise that isn't atrocious. You spend the first couple of months with violin not even creating music. All you're focused on is the technicality of it. And then very slowly you transfer from all your focus being on the technical to your focus shifting to the musical. And it's the same with drawing. You can't expect to... I think that you should plan on your development as an artist. It's going to take years. Learning a language takes years. Truly understanding a language, not just like getting by on holiday, being able to order a cappuccino, but truly being able to understand a language, being able to, speak with the locals. That takes time. Drawing is a language. It's going to take time. My inability to copy anyone is leading to my style emerging. There you go, perfect. Whitney said, I attended one class at Art Center. All right. Look, it's not to say that there's not value in going to a place like that. I'm not suggesting that at all. And if you want to learn to be an industry standard quality painter or draftsman or designer, that's a very good place to do it. My issue with it is I see so many people coming out of those places and there's no individual style. They all draw like and paint like their teachers. And look, I guess if you want to just make money in animation, that's probably not a terrible strategy. It's just a bit boring, that's all. Read a very, Glenn Vilppu has a beautiful statement in the beginning, in the foreword of his figure drawing book. Hold on a second. Hold, please. All right. This is a great book. Mr. Vilppu's Drawing Manual. Thoroughly recommend it. I just want to read you something. Although this course is primarily taught for students who are interested in animation, the material covered is applicable to anyone who is interested in the tradition of fine draftsmanship. I was an exhibiting artist and instructor of drawing for many years before entering the animation industry. All of the great leaders and innovators who created this art form were artists first. They did not start out studying animation. Drawing is not just developing a technical skill. To draw well requires the development of a whole range of integrated disciplines. At the top of the list being able to communicate your feelings visually and to recognize what creates those feelings in the observer. In short, the ability to focus your emotions and intellect to express visually what is important to you. All the great leaders and innovators who created this art form were artists first. That is maybe the most important statement that you'll hear today. I think it applies to everything. We will leave Mr. Vilppu's book there because it deserves. Buy a copy of this book. Do yourselves a favor. There you go. Is there any way to show you my work progress? I must stand by this stuff. Well, if you're a member, you can put it on the Discord, and then there's a very good chance I'll see it. Or you can take a mentorship with me and send me your work, and I'll happily give you an analysis. I wish I could have attended one class with Hogarth, but I missed him. All right. Let's do a little bit of finger painting here, and then we will move on. Because we're already at 6:25. These have taken a while. It's been fun though. I've got a feeling we're only going to have time for the third one though. We're not going to have time to do all four. just going to hit this with the eraser a little bit and then we'll call it. My prefrontal cortex has been thoroughly nourished after hearing that. Isn't that beautiful? I agree. You're very welcome. Really. Richard, my goal is to become the new Van Gogh, so to speak. My social life and health are starting to suffer. Should I speak to a psychiatrist? Cookie Monster, all those questions are completely beyond the scope of me being able to give you anything meaningful advice. You think you need to speak to a psychiatrist, my friend? I would strongly suggest that you speak to a psychiatrist. Let the psychiatrist be the one to tell you that you don't need a psychiatrist, not me on a live stream. I am not a medical professional and certainly not about to start giving out medical advice. All I would say is, you know, you talk about, I don't know if you're being facetious or not, but my goal is to become the new Van Gogh, so to speak. Just do your work. Let history decide who you are. Don't worry about it. Just do your work. History will be very happy. People will be very happy to tell you where you sit in the pantheon of artists that have come before you. But don't let that be the thing that gets you up in the morning. Life is short. Have some fun. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy doing your work. And that is something, you know, we talk about studying anatomy and drawing and painting and the amount of time it takes and the journey and all of that. Make peace with it and enjoy the process. Because if you don't enjoy the process, people talk about, oh, learning anatomy is hard. Learning anatomy is not hard if you're into it. But if you hate every waking moment that you're having to sit down and learn anatomy, guess what? You're in for a rough ride. Have you had experience of overshading where it's unreadable without excessive bold line? Oh yeah, of course. Here's the thing. Okay, everyone goes through that at some stage. It's all about value control, right? I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but and value control just takes time. I am going to call it there with this one. That was a fascinating study. I'm not sure I've quite done it justice, but I think I'm in the ballpark. I'm not hating it, so we'll move on. Well, this is why you should really start with value painting before moving to color. Right? Speaking to Lulu's point. Okay, what do we have left in front of us? We have two poses. Okay, we are down to the last 30 minutes. We only have the 30 minutes, give or take, but we only have time to do one more pose, essentially. So what do we want to do? Do we want to do pose number 3? Or pose number 4? Both have a lot of potential for being fun exercises. I'm happy to do either. But we are probably only going to get to one, so I want you guys to decide which one we're doing. Okay? You tell me. If your painting looks bad in black and white, then colors won't help you. Emmanuel, you are correct. You are correct. I like 4 because of the asymmetry. It also seems easier. I do think that number 4 is probably a bit easier. At the same time, I think 4 has the potential to look weirder if it's not pulled off right. Both interesting. Number 3. 3 seems more natural. It does seem more natural, I'll give you that. 3. You know, democracy has spoken. Number 3 it is. It's going to be a challenge. I think the angle of number 4 was easier, but number 3 it is. All right. I'm just learning shading and values as retro boy. Cool. Yeah, look, good. Just remember, less is more. Less is more, less is more. What is in light, what is in shadow? Establish those 2 key things first. Then worry about half tones in either the lit or the dark side or the cast shadows or whatever it might be. You should be able to squint and clearly tell what is in light and what is in shadow. Remember the mantra. It should look as good on a billboard as it does on a postage stamp. Or you can flip that idea. And how's that going to read? With clear ideas of what is in light and what is in shadow. Don't overvalue or put in too many value ranges. Less is more, less is more, less is more. Okay. I actually didn't even start the clock for the last one. We'll start it for this one, why not? Okay. All right, so we've got a lot of perspective, a lot of foreshortening here. Tricky foreshortening. Let's see what we can do with that. So just like, if we think about, boxes and this type of idea, basic shapes, you can almost see with the glutes where that box kind of turns, right? Go from here down to here, or that turning point. It's actually super useful to think in these terms. You can see the box almost like that, right? So if we could see through his legs, we'd be seeing something that looks like that. All right. kind of see the sacrum sitting. That's very subtly sitting in this area here. And that glute. I'm getting almost the opposite effect with the iliac crest sitting here. I think most of good work comes in art down to composition. It certainly is a huge, it's obviously a huge contributing factor for sure. Coming up, occipital ridge sitting about here. Scapula are pushed back towards the spine, right? So our scapula is sitting in roughly in here. And both kind of pushed in because the arms are coming back. So if we actually look at where this elbow is, once again, heavy foreshortening on all this stuff, guys. Gotta be really careful. Elbow's about here. Wrist is about here. We've got that tricep sitting in there. Yeah, really got to figure out our perspective as we go. Oh, we're going to lose our way. Biceps compressed here too. One's coming out this way. And this wrist is about here. Yeah, because our eye line is below where the image ends, which is down here, so we're looking up at everything, right? Crazy. It does make for a fun image though. And the bun sitting about there. Something like that. The foreshortening is kidding me. Yeah, it's tricky, huh? About how long did it take to complete your profile drawing? So detailed. Which one is that? Oh, the head? No, probably, maybe, I don't think that took more than a couple of hours. One thing you'll learn about me, Retro, is I am incredibly impatient. Impatient and lazy, so that makes a great combination for not wanting to ever spend more than a couple of hours on a drawing, which is why this style of figure drawing suits me down to the ground, because I couldn't do the academic type of drawing. That stuff does my head in. I do have a kind of a feeling that if you haven't captured the idea after a couple of hours, you're probably not going to capture the idea. Then again, the academic stuff's all about technique. It's all about technique. Flogging that technique to death for the most part. How's your impatience doing with oil painting? Yeah, it's touch and go, if I'm honest, Doug. Oh, Cookie Monster asked a question, which I only realised because Ludo answered it. So let me see what it was. Richard, they say that copying the masters is educational. Would it also be educational to copy, imitate amateurs that I like? Okay, well, I think you bring up a different question, which is what's the definition of a master and what's the definition of an amateur? Are we going by the definition of someone who makes money at something, or are we talking about the old masters versus potentially new masters? Because an amateur would suggest that this is someone who does not make a living from their art, if you go by the strict definition of what amateur means, right? Is that what you mean? I'm not trying to be difficult or facetious in my answering your question, because I think that the word amateur really needs to be established and what we mean by that. Look, there's a lot to be said for studying what we'll call quote-unquote established masters, right? People that have, through time and general consensus, are considered to be masters. But we've plenty of living masters. We've plenty of people that are every bit as good as the old masters. I would argue, this gets into some tricky territory, but as time goes on, the more I tend to look at some of the old masters and not be as enamored as maybe I once was. But look, I think that we, it comes back to this thing of standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And they were giants in their own right, and they were trailblazers. But does that mean they were the high point of what's possible? Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. We have people that are every bit easily as good as the people that came before us, if not, frankly, a lot better. But you can't really compare, because we are, without them, maybe we wouldn't be where we are. Right? So but this idea that, we look at the old Renaissance masters, for example, and that was the high point of what's achievable, it would be a laughable statement. Like, there's no doubt that most of the people even watching this stream have a better understanding of anatomy than so many of the masters that came before us. I find it really hard to go back to a painting in progress after the first day. Yeah, I do too, Doug. I do too. Cookie Monster, yeah, I didn't think of that. I mean, someone who is really good or someone who isn't that good. To be an amateur is someone who is not very skilled, regardless of whether they make money from their art, in my humble opinion. Well, then don't study from them. I would say, like, at least if you're going to make, if you're going to copy or imitate, both things, I think, like, there's a place for master copies, but that doesn't mean you need to copy something in someone's style. Be careful with imitate. No, work from people that are good. Don't copy bad stuff. Why would you do that? No. To answer your question, like, copy people that have set our bar high. You start copying bad people, or that you're going to be ingraining mistakes into your work. Why would you want to sabotage yourself in that way? You don't want to do that, Cookie Monster. Let me tell you. No. Steal from the best if you're going to steal. And do steal. All right, so we're getting there, slowly but surely. Slowly but surely. according to the turn of the form and then down this way. What would you suggest studying after understanding gesture drawing well? Oh, Risley, you have uncorked a a rant. Gesture, in my opinion, should be the final stage of development. Gesture is, in my opinion, the hardest stage of drawing, and I don't believe it's the thing that comes together until we have gone through all the other things. Now, ironically, gesture is also the first stage of the drawing. So we have this cruel twist of fate where the first stage of the drawing is also what will ultimately be your final stage of development. Good gesture doesn't come till the end. Every drawing has a gesture, but not every gesture evolves into something else. There are two types of gesture. There is the gesture that you're going to do for a drawing in its own right, and then there is the gesture which is the first stage of a more complete piece. Those two should be treated and handled differently. So to say that I understand gesture drawing well, you can't understand gesture drawing well without understanding everything else about drawing. Only then can you really understand gesture drawing well. It's not to say you shouldn't do gesture, and it's not to say that you shouldn't practice gesture, but understand that gesture is the poetic form of drawing. So it is the reduction of ideas, right? It is the taking away of words to say something simply and directly. How can you take away words until you understand the grammar? You can't. So good gesture can only come after you've learned to draw complicated. Then you can draw simple, but you can't draw simple until you've understood all the other things that come with it. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Then what comes after gesture? Well, you should be doing all those other things, drawing volumetrically, thinking sculpturally, drawing all the ideas that we're thinking about here. So there's a lot to unpack with what seems on the surface like a relatively simple question. Jeremiah is back. Welcome back, Jeremiah. Good to have you back. Does that make sense? All I've just said? I hope so, and I hope you take it in the spirit it's meant. But it's super important. Marine, I just discovered your channel. Thank you for this high quality content. It's very enriching. You're so welcome, Marine, and welcome. Awesome, Emmanuel. Yeah, look, hopefully people will post their work over there, so you know what people do. But You guys know what you need to do. I appreciate this round because now I understand why I struggle with gesture. James, that's fine. Good. I'm glad you struggle with it. Continue to practice it and understand why you struggle with it, and it's not your fault. And there's nothing you can do to change that fact other than put in the time. Perspective is a good one to dive into. Well, Cookie Monster. Okay. Rant number 2. No, I'm kidding. But here's the thing. Well, are we talking about perspective or are we talking about foreshortening? Which is essentially, to some degree, the same thing, right? There is a place for foreshortening in the process, but I don't think it could. To say that that's the thing that comes after gesture is I think it's misinformed. It's not the way that I think we should approach things. But I get the spirit of what you're saying. I'm not attacking, just for what it's worth. I just have some very particular ideas on how I think these things should be approached. Because I think a lot of people waste an awful lot of time focusing on the wrong things at the wrong time in their particular stage of development. And it's such a shame because I think most tutors don't either know or care to make the distinction, and they just work through a series of scripts, for want of a better term, on subjects that should be approached and kind of in a one-size-fits-all way, and it's just not the way. It's not the way to do it. Ryan, welcome, man. Hit the community chat tab on the channel. You will find a link to the reference that's hosted on my website. Good to have you along. You will also find a link to the Discord. Go, please join the Discord, join the community, chat with us over there and all of that good stuff. Rick, did you just show up, Rick? Or have you been here all along? Please answer that question. It has always amazed me how a distant object has no foreshortening, while a close one has fisheye. 25 fisheye perspective foreshortening. Interesting, yeah? Thanks for the rant. New question. In what order should I approach learning, studying figure drawing? Seriously, and I'm not to be facetious or self-serving, although what I'm about to say is self-serving, please start with my figure drawing fundamentals video on my channel. I think that will get, and then look at what are the most popular videos on my channel. If you go to my channel and look up the most popular videos, study them in that order. It's actually turning out to be a pretty solid path, in my opinion. Come to the live streams, draw along with us. All of those things will help, genuinely. I know that this just sounds like a QVC paid ad, but it's really not. a lot to be said for community. And us as a drawing community, it's one of the things I'm most proud about with this channel is the community that we have. It's thanks to you guys. That's something I cannot take credit for, other than presenting an environment for it to happen. But you guys have really done by showing up, asking questions, interacting. This is what creates the community, and I'm forever grateful to all of you for that. As long as you don't mind putting up with a few rants every now and then we'll all get on famously. Just walked in the door. Okay. Rick showed up for the gripe. Rick, hang in there, dude. I'm with you. All right. Everything's gonna be awesome. We're gonna make it awesome. We're gonna brute force awesome onto the situation. How about that? I feel like we live in a cycle of gesture, structure, composition, and perspective. We need all of them to improve. If one is too weak, then we may run into problems further advancing in others. Well, there's a symbiosis between all of them, right? One informs the other, for sure. It's a very good observation. Right, I'm ashamed because I've constantly watched your videos, just found out the membership. Well, that's a failure on my part, Ryan, because clearly I need to make it clearer that this is something that is available, which I will do. I need to make an intro video, the whole thing, but you'll also get to know that things on Richard time tend to happen glacially. Wanted to thank you for the guidance in your videos. Ryan, you're so welcome. Thank you for becoming a member. That's how you help the channel, and that is a huge help, believe me. And I'm very grateful to all of you guys who are members. It's the best way to support the channel. Hopefully you get a little something in return. This has been a fun session. I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the hell out of drawing this guy. It's like not easy, but it's so satisfying. And as many of you know, I am quite partial to drawing a back. I do enjoy back views tremendously. As a human being, you need a tribe to function well, lets you feel at ease and to flow state and do good work. Very true. I like that. Thanks, Toby. Yeah, Rick. Dude. We're here, man. We're all together in this. for this crazy journey. Don't worry about it. Cool. I am going to use creative license to leave the hands super loose. I actually think it kind of helps because this is really where the attention needs to be, right? Now I'm glad you showed up, Rick, because I was concerned that you'd be, you know, dwelling in your own, you know. This is a crazy angle, isn't it? Thank you for this oasis, says Tina. It's been positively regenerative today, hasn't it? I agree. It's been actually, I've got a smile on my face today, and I'm glad for that. Feels like taking back some power, right? If I was a little younger, I'd probably be marinating in a bottle of gluten-free vodka right now. There you go. Yeah. Nah, you don't need that. We don't need that. Alright, I'm gonna hit this sucker with just a tiny bit of a razor, and then I think we'll call it for today. Well, I say that. Hold on. I do need to hit just a little bit of cast shadow on here and there. Just a tiny bit. Okay. Yeah, let's just pop out a couple of lights here and there. I think actually if I need to do anything to this, I think I've made him just a little bit on the chunky side. Let's help our dude lose 20 pounds. There we go. It's better. You ever draw in charcoal from a comfort pose, like on the couch? Ever? No. No. I couldn't do. That would be crazy. Charcoal's, but for me at least, charcoal's far too volatile a medium to try and do that from the comfort of the couch. Graphite. If you want to draw on the couch while watching TV, I think graphite's probably your best bet. You know, charcoal demands that you take it seriously, or it will punish you. I think that's a pretty good place to stop. What do you think, guys? Shall we call it? I think so. Good stuff. All right, we made it. Fantastic. What's today? Monday. That's right. I forgot. Lydia, I'm catching up, says, I'm catching up the stream from the beginning since I'm late. Just wanted to say that I find it really interesting and helpful when you explain all the muscles. Thank you. You're very welcome, Lydia. If you get this far into the video, you'll see that I've responded to your comment. Glad it helps. I'm going to try and do more of that at the beginning of a stream, to just talk about a little idea. You know, I think it's a bit of fun. Volatile translates to entire couch will be your canvas. Yeah, exactly. Guys, that was fun. I really enjoyed today's session. I'm so glad we did it. Thank you so much for joining me as always. Really, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the questions. There've been some really interesting questions too. It's always fun to get some good questions while you're drawing, and you get a chance to, you know, have that conversation, so to speak. Folks, I will see you all on Thursday. Who knows what? We'll figure it out. In the meantime, how do you feel about doing eyes one stream? Eyes are a great idea, Doug. I think I know we talked about this before, but to isolate eyes one stream, nose, mouths, to really give them the respect and the time that they deserve. And we could do an analysis like we have with the anatomy, and to go in and then do some studies of just those. Like really, just noses. Beautiful. What a beautiful, fascinating structure just to focus in on and do some studies, draw them large and really get into the details. Wonderful. Yes, to eyes. We'll do that. But guys, look, thanks again. Please look after yourselves. Take care. And I will see you all on Thursday. In the meantime, please remember to hit the like button or the dislike button on your way out. That would be awesome. For you new members, head over to the Discord channel. You will find a link to the Discord channel in that same community chat that you found the reference link for this session, for the reference. If you scroll down a bit, you'll find Discord channel link. Go over there, and we'll meet over there and continue the conversation over there. All right, guys, thanks so much. I will see you Thursday. All right, cheers. Bye.